If you've been struggling to work on your social skills and you just have a hard time with people in general, you're in luck because today's book recommendation is called Captivate, The Science of Succeeding with People by Vanessa Van Edwards. This book is all about what you need to do to improve your behavior and your social skills so that when you're in social settings, when you're talking to people, even when you're writing emails to each other, you're going to be in a much better place to behave at your best and bring out the best in others so you can have the best chance you have of getting what you want in life. Hey, this is Michael with Michael's Business English. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Rincon. I'm a former six-figure data analyst turned ESL instructor and career coach. I support English language learners improve their career development through communications and language training. If you're new here, on this channel we talk about business English, communications, and career development. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you like and subscribe, and all the links mentioned in this video will be found in the description box below. So before I actually begin giving you the book recommendation, I want to talk about why reading books in general is important. It's one of the most important habits. So if you've seen my video on Miracle Morning, the Miracle Morning routine, one thing that I brought up was the fact that a book actually focuses on one idea, one main point, and it just goes through and hammers it in your head. Whereas things like a blog post or a video will give you like quick points, but you'll forget about it. And one of the reasons that is because books have tons of stories or anecdotes. These are things that allow you to remember the lessons behind them. Like if you've ever been through a webinar or seminar, you'll notice that they do a lot of stories. They give you the backstory. Like they'll tell you why they have these challenges. So Dean Grazzi is one of my favorites. He talks about how he was so poor growing up that he and his family had to live in this one room and they had to sleep on the bathroom floor. And you'll never forget that. I'll never forget Dean Grazzi's origin story because it was such a powerful thing to me. It's such a powerful memory. And he talks about that story to remind you like of what life can be like, to give you hope, right? That's what I've also seen in these books is that books will give you case studies and examples that allow you to see yourself in the situation, allow you to see it in action. So you can see like, that's how I do it. That's why I think books are so important. So this is why you need to be aware of why you should be reading books. Now, why I chose Captivate in particular, why I chose Captivate for this month's book recommendation is, first of all, Captivate's amazing. Vanessa Van Edwards, I've been following her for a while. I first found out about her through The Art of Charm in one of their podcasts, and I've been following her for a while. I joined her course called People School that's separate from Captivate. That's a separate program. I recommend that as well. And it's one of the most powerful courses I've seen on building better behaviors that are more socially attractive, right? So the general premise of Captivate is about becoming a more attractive person through social behavior, right? A lot of people will tell you things like you're born good looking, or you're born with talent, you're born with being a charming person. And what Vanessa points out, like at the beginning of the book, like I just said, like the story is that she grew up being a nerd. She grew up being out of place. She grew up getting picked on. But over time, she learned that she could learn behaviors that would make her more attractive, that would make her more socially acceptable, allow her to make friends, allow her to get invited to parties. I mean, now she does speaking gigs and keynotes. So she's quite kind of a big deal. Very cool stuff. That's why I was so happy to choose this book. And the reason I chose this book for this month, because the last few books I've talked about have been more strategy, but they're more like very specific strategies. So for example, Miracle Morning is like setting up your routine so you have habits. And then the book after that was 2-Hour Job Search, which is very specific to job seekers. And Indistractable was about like building better habits again, but so that you could focus, because I know people keep saying I don't have enough time. Captivate is about what I think is the most important thing you'll learn, like more important than any of the other habits in my opinion, any of the other book recommendations I've brought up, except maybe Miracle Morning, which allows you to start reading more. Captivate is about being a more attractive person. And this is the difference that makes a difference in everything. And this is, I don't know if you know this about me. I don't know if I've told you this in some of the videos, if you've missed this or not, if you've seen this. But when I started looking for work, when I graduated college, I couldn't hold a job because I struggled with nuances of corporate culture. So there were certain things I just get in trouble with. The biggest thing by far, the biggest deal breaker for me that caused me to get laid off every time was that I wasn't getting along with others. This is such an important thing to understand. If you struggle with your job search, it's probably because you don't get along with others. You'll notice this, like, it's people say things like it's all about who you know. Well, guess what? Like, how do you get to that situation where you have the relationships with the right people? You have to have decent social skills so that you can meet them. Okay, let me think what else might be useful before I move on. So the other thing I want to point out before I actually go in a deep dive of the book is that this is a pretty light book compared to some of the other programs I've gone through. And I think it's a great book for beginners, right? So if you ever tried reading Dale Carnegie's 92 Tips and Tricks, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Leo Lonendo's 92 Tips and Tricks to Get Anyone to Like You, what's another one? Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They're pretty big books, and they're pretty intense. But I found Captivate is very good for beginners. So if you're just like brand new to like socializing and you're very shy, this is a book I would recommend for you if you're kind of like, I don't know most of this stuff. I'm still struggling. So one of my students, for example, her name is Priya. She told me once that her coworker made fun of her for not being social. Captivate is a book I would have recommended for her at the time that I didn't find it at the time that I knew her, but like it's the book I would have recommended for her because it's such an easy book to go through. It's very easy to go through, very easy to read. So just keep that in mind. This is a great book if you're just starting out and you're just not sure what to do with your social skills. It's going to go through quite a few things. Okay, so before I deep dive, there's something I want to tell you else about the book. So she says there are 14 behavior hacks that you need to master that will help you out. You don't actually need to master these, in my opinion. These are more like good to know. Just go through a little bit here and there. Just go back to the book to get better at this. And for the sake of this video, to keep it in a timely matter, I'm not going to go through the 14 hacks. Basically, the book comes through 3 sections. Its first part is the first 5 minutes. The second one is the first 5 hours, and the next one is the first 5 days. But the logic behind that is that there are certain things you can do when you get to know someone, when you first meet them, as you get to know them, and as you know them over time, as you build that relationship. So I'm going to go through some of these and give you some examples of things you can do that I thought were very interesting. So for example, one thing I really liked was this concept of control, meaning like instead of trying to go to social events where you are very out of place, you need to find social events where you can be comfortable and you can just be yourself in your most relaxed state. So for example, one thing I found out about me is that I can't go to happy hours. I can't go to bars and nightclubs. I've got a speech impairment. I got a hearing loss. It's impossible. I would not be successful in those environments. And I've tried this again and again and again, and I found like it's consistently the case where if there's too many people, it's too loud, I will be like, I'll be too anxious for starters, and also I can't be heard anyway because of my speech impairment. So what I do now is that instead of going to like the big happy hours, I choose to go to smaller like social events where I can actually meet people on a one-on-one basis. So one thing that really helped me, for example, was inviting people out to coffee through informational interviews, as instead of trying to go to happy hours. Now, the downside is that like that's going to take longer to do informational interviews one-on-one than it would be to do like to a social event or to a lunch. But that's the world I live in, right? That's the reality I got to work in because I don't have the ability to go to the big loud events. I can't. So another tactic that she talks about is something called decoding. She talks about how you can actually read body language and understand what is actually going on. Now, I won't go into a lot of detail about this one. This is pretty intense, but understand that if you can understand, if you get better at reading the facial expressions, she calls them micro expressions, which are involuntary emotional responses, you will have a better chance of understanding the situation and captivating, maybe not captivating, but like taking advantage of that situation. So if you notice how someone responds, like they get excited over a certain topic, that is something you should talk more about. There's another book I'll recommend while I'm recommending this book. It's a book called I Hear You. I'll talk about that one in the future. But this is a book about how to become a better listener. And he talks about as well his name is Michael Sorensen, the author. He talks about how to, get better at conversation. But that one's a bit more advanced in my opinion. So just an FYI. Some other things that you can do, another hack that comes up is called empower. So what he likes to talk about that I think is really important is making sure other people feel good. Like, this is one of the most important things you can learn. This is not something I just learned from Captivate. This is something I've learned from dating advice. So one thing that one of my mentors used to say is, like, don't kick a dog in the face. I think he's quoting Dale Carnegie, but that's what he says. So for example, in the dating world, like, a lot of men are given like lines to use to approach and start asking questions. So one line that we got was, tell me something interesting about you. I don't know anything about you, right? It's a very basic conversation starter after you're talking to someone for a while. And that allows you to carry the conversation. And I've had girls say things like, one girl told me she likes yoga. And what I did that was wrong was I said, oh, yoga sucks. She said, this is something I like. And I said something, oh, that's awful. I don't agree with you. You got to be very careful with how you disagree with people. There's a way to do that. But what I did was I basically kicked the dog in the face. When you're talking to people, you want to empower them. You want to support them. So an example of what I saw my mentor do that was really powerful during a happy hour, during a drinking thing. We were at a bar, we're talking. He's talking to the guy next to him, and he's like, I've always been curious about how you train for a marathon. Because the guy told him, like, I'm training for a marathon. I'm getting ready for my next Ironman. And then my mentor goes, I've always been curious about how you train for a marathon. And they end up having a 20-minute conversation about this. And I just watched it the whole time. All my mentor's doing is sitting there listening, like, I see, that's interesting, asking more questions, right? It's really powerful stuff if you can learn to make people feel like they're the hero of their story. So an example of a time I did this real quick was I was at a restaurant and I was talking to the waitress. And I don't know how it came across, but we ended up talking about dating in China because she's from China. And I asked her, like, what was it like? And she was like, she talked about it. I said, that's interesting, right? And she kept talking about it some more. I barely had to say anything. At the end of the conversation, she was like, you're interested in our culture? Right? She was really happy about that because it's something she was really excited about. She gets to talk about her culture. And she was happy that someone was actually empowering her, someone was interested in what she wanted to talk about. Okay, I think we've gone through quite a few examples. Again, there's 14 hacks to learn from this book. So I highly recommend you get this book when you can. Go through it. Get ready to take some notes. Get ready to take some exercises to go work on this better. And this is going to help you become more social. Okay, thanks, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you guys in the next video. Thank you.